Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Riddle here, and welcome to my channel. Welcome back. If you're a subscriber, I really appreciate it. So, I wanted to talk about these times that we are living in right now. You will see, like a garden, nothing reveals a person's true personality or their true constitution like crisis. Now, I'm one of those fortunate, unfortunate people. And what I mean by that is I grew up in a lot of crisis. So for me, I thrive in crisis. I actually love the challenge of a crisis. And I think that's one of the reasons that I took on gardening, is because it calms me and it gives me something solid in my life that I have a reasonable amount of control. At the same time, it humbles me because ultimately nature will do what nature does. And there's times that you simply have to let go. There's some things you can control, and there's some things that you have to let go of. And that is a really healthy paradigm for me. Now, if you notice these days of the coronavirus, everyone is just like, oh, it's so horrible, it's so horrible. Well, yeah, it's horrible, but it's also has the ability to be an amazing teacher. I try to look at life and life situations as this wonderful free education if you put it in that context. And let me give you an example. You will see the people that were hypochondriacs, the people that were drama queens, the people who lived a really, I want to say, like a false life or an artificial life through social media. Those are the people that are spending all of this wonderful time that they have right now, that they could be going through some type of self-discovery, some type of healing, journaling, cleaning, organizing, on and on and on. They're spending the time worrying. And those people will always be non-productive. They will always spend their lives focusing their energy on things they can't control. I can't control what temperature it is today, but I can control having knowledge of the temperature and knowing what I can do and what my parameters are, what I can garden and what I can do for my garden during this time of the year and this temperature phase. So moving forward, looking at this crisis as a teacher, what have you learned about yourself so far? What have you learned about your government? What have we learned about how we process stress? What have we learned about how fragile or strong our supply system is? Well, it's so obvious, right? And many of you may be at my channel right now because you want to learn to garden, but I'm hoping to offer you so much more than just the standard garden advice. I really want you to understand that gardening has great wisdom to it, and it's a discipline, not a hobby. It's a discipline, just like life. Look what we got here. That's a nice treat. This is a Cape gooseberry or a Cape ground cherry. Now, many people try to contact me to find out where to get seeds for these. It is the perennial version of the ground cherry. And even though it is still April, early April, this plant in Northern California produced this beautiful fruit for me all year round practically. And now it's really taking off again. This is one of my favorite things in my garden because this berry is full of, it's actually in the nightshade family, so it's not a fruit at all. It's in the tomato or pepper family, and eggplants also, and on and on and on. But this fruit is full of amazing vitamins and antioxidants, and fresh, delicious. Dehydrated, amazing. Frozen, and then throw it into shakes and things, incredible. This is a really good survival food. And I'm gonna eat it right now and talk with food in my mouth. So, what have you learned during this crisis? Have we learned to appreciate our friends and loved ones and coworkers more? From what I saw, there was a huge majority of people around the world that have become incredibly misanthropic. And what I mean by misanthropic is that we're just not into humans anymore. Something is turning us against not just nature, but turning us against our own kind. When I traveled to Italy last year, I was so unwelcomed. It was so unwelcoming. You know, there are people at the airports that, like, they don't want tourists and literally telling you, go home. And this was happening all around the world in these heavy over-touristed spots. And then you hear people say, you know, I'm a dog person, not a people person, or I can't stand people, or, you know, pretending to like people, but yet then not really getting involved with people. Because getting involved with people and getting involved in your tribe or in your society doesn't mean that we have this massive control to really pick and choose and micromanage who we socialize with. That's what we've become. It's been become a very capitalistic social structure. And the sad thing about that is when we choose or try to over control whom we socialize with, we don't learn anything. And then when we come up against a personality or an idea that doesn't match ours, we're not equipped to debate in a healthy way, to be open to other people's opinions or ideas. You know, it's really, really become hurtful to us emotionally. And you wonder why everyone has social anxiety disorder. Well, you develop these disorders when you don't take your fear or your anxiety head on, when you don't try to deal with it, when you don't try to heal from it, when you hide away from the world or hide from your problems, they are exasperated. And that's another thing I love about gardening is that you don't have, well, you do have the luxury of not dealing with the problems, but then the whole garden and all your work and all your money just goes to shit, which is acceptable for some people, but that's never been acceptable for me. So I love that a garden forces you to deal with problems. And for me, it teaches me problem solving. And that's what life's about. And human life in society used to be this precious thing. When you look at the tribes, when life actually was precious and we didn't have the massive amount of human lives stuffed on this planet that we do now, people didn't have the luxury of just avoiding or discarding people. They actually had to work together for the betterment of everybody, not just the individual. And that's what's kind of cool about this place that we're in right now, is that people are having to forcibly make decisions for what's best for everyone, not just the individual. But then, of course, you always have these entitled assholes. I don't know if you saw, like, the church people who didn't pick that soon enough. That's a lesson. Who, regardless of the warnings, congregate and infect themselves, which is one personal choice. But what they don't understand is when they congregate, they're also threatening society. And to me, that's not religious freedom. That is pure ignorance, and it's a form of entitlement. When you are making the choice to do something just because you feel it benefits you regardless of how it affects the rest of society, that's not right. If we were in another country like China, those people would have had their asses beaten and thrown in prison. But luckily for them, we live in this democracy that is a lot more forgiving or enabling, however you want to look at it, to people that are assholes. Just saying. That's another thing you learn about in gardening, like how things benefit each other, how certain things grow together, and how things are they're interdependent. Everything from what's in the soil, living and organic, to different plants that work well around each other and other plants that don't really care for each other's company. So, are you taking this time right now to worry and stress out, or are you taking this time to learn how you can adapt? Because that's what nature does. Nature adapts. Do you want to survive, or do you want to thrive? If you want to thrive, what can you be doing right now instead of wasting time? Well, on a emotional level, you can be, really enjoying that time with your children. People are like, oh, I'm going crazy and I'm trapped with my children. It's like, oh, well, why the hell did you have children? If you can't stand your kid's own company, that's a good place to start. Like, wow. I mean, did you really mean to have kids, or was it just, were you just following the herd? I mean, think about how precious. You always say, oh, if I had time off. Everyone has time off. Almost everyone. Even when you're working from home, suddenly we have the luxury of time. What are you doing with your time? Because whatever that is basically who you're going to be and probably what you're going to be the rest of your life. So if you're not taking advantage and seeing the opportunity here, the gift of this, then you will always look at life in a lack manner instead of looking at it as it's presenting opportunities and gifts. You could be working on that book you always wanted to write. You could be learn to speak enough of a language so when all this is over with and airline tickets are super affordable and you can go to that foreign country you've always wanted to visit and actually speak enough of the language that you can order something to eat or be polite and find the bathroom. We could do that now. You've probably got a good couple months still. It's a great time. It's also a great time to see where your weaknesses are. Have you not saved money? Have you not saved money? Well, okay, so let's say you don't make enough money to save money. Okay, then perhaps you're doing the wrong thing. Perhaps right now, realizing that you haven't had the ability to save any money, or you made the choice not to save any money because you thought everything was going to always be peachy keen, has set you up for failure and made your life incredibly vulnerable. Now is the time to reassess moving forward, resources and life. When this is all over with, do you need to focus on re-educating? Getting that degree that you haven't gotten yet, or getting that licensure? You could be working on that right now. I have a tenant, and she wrote me, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so worried." Blah, 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 blah. And I basically told her what I'm telling you right now. And suddenly she's like, "You know what? I have this licensure I have to get. I have all these classes online I could take." And so when this is over with, I can get my licensure to get to the next level of my career. And I'm like, there you go, girl. You have time. Love it. Love it. Enjoy it. And if you're feeling lonely and isolated and you just can't stand being by yourself and being with your thoughts, that's a teacher right there. You know, we are always so constantly entertained. We cannot quiet our minds. We cannot sit with ourselves and our thoughts. It just drives most people crazy. And that's not normal. That's not natural. We're supposed to have times that we are stimulated, times that we spend with other people, times that we spend being entertained, and then we need time to process that stuff. And I think people have become, they really are challenged with critical thinking now. And I really think the intelligence level is lowering because there's no efforts into thinking and problem solving, because the time that we have to sit alone with ourselves and do these kind of things is consumed with constantly being entertained with pretty much stupidity. You know, if I see one more asshole doing a dumbass dance in their kitchen on a TikTok or on Instagram, I'm gonna blow my head off. It's like redundant. And personally, I would just really rather spend my time learning, growing, and working on my future. Another thing you can do right now, if you truly are worried about the economy and where it's going to, because nobody knows at this point, there's indicators going every direction, and we really can't trust the government to lead us and tell us the truth, which is even more terrifying. I've already started to do the research on, you know, what did people do during the Great Depression or the Great Recession? We might be heading towards a depression. We might be. So why not be prepared for that? Why not get ahead of the game and say, okay, if this really did happen, what could I do? You know, what adjustments would I have to make? How would I have to change my life? Because not everybody was a starving hobo during the Great Depression. Many people made great fortunes. A lot of the great retailers were created during the Great Depression. You simply have to take the time to tune into abundance. You take the time to do the research and see what stocks did best, what sold the best, what services were needed during that time. And there's plenty of them. There's plenty of them, because economics are often, you know, the economics that they frighten with us, or the situations that they frighten us with, are extreme versions of, you know, of a situation. So again, you can get caught up in the fear and disempowerment, or you can take the time to insulate yourself with knowledge, and with not just knowledge, because that's another problem we have right now, is too much knowledge but not enough action. And also there's a lot of fake knowledge out there. I loved it. The astrophysicist, what's his name? De Rossi, the African American astronomer. He's doing a masterclass on critical thinking. And what critical thinking is the way they teach people in science to pick apart fact from fiction, so that they come up with a really fair, solid idea of what is truth. I really want to take that class desperately, because I do not have that. I do not have that knowledge. I do my best, but like everyone in this day and age, where, you know, it's just a barrage of information coming at us, and often you just get tired and you just want to be right. You just want to say, yeah, that one, I believe in that just because I believe in that. But that's not fair to anybody, and it does not make society stronger, and it does not doesn't help with the evolution of humanity. So, get a journal. I know it's hard to leave the house. You probably have an old notebook laying around somewhere. If not, sneak off to the dollar store if you have to. Wear a mask. Hey, there's a funny one. So I have worn a mask since the beginning of this thing. And I was at a store, and there was this man who was working at the store, a little bit older, and he was wearing a mask. And this really bossy middle-aged woman basically shamed his mask off of him, telling him, as a matter of fact, blah, 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 blah. Of course, she learned all this shit from the news and our government. The funny thing is, logically, I knew wearing a mask would give some kind of protection, worn correctly, and of course following all the standards. And so I just stood there with my mask on and looked at this woman like she was like, whatever, that is your right, but you really shouldn't be pressuring other people to do what you heard on the internet or on the news. And so what happens just a couple weeks later, all of a sudden, we're all supposed to wear masks again. Well, guess what? I never took my mask off. And why? Because, again, people have lost the idea of critical thinking, or the ability to think critically. And sometimes your ideas may not match society, but I was doing what I thought was the most logical and what was best for me, and it just turned out to be the right thing. And not to boast, but it happens often. It happens often. And it's only because I think I take the time and have the time to process what I learn in a day. I take the time to walk away from social media, to step away from the news and quiet myself while I'm gardening or doing other projects, and really think things through carefully. And this is a good time that we all can quiet ourselves. And I think people are often frightened to hear that inner dialogue that they have with themselves, because once you hear that, you have to take action, or you don't. I have a friend, and he became a nurse, and he came from some rough circumstances, and he's had a rough life, basically because of poor chances. But he also, has been sober for over a decade, so that's a huge accomplishment. And yet, every time something in his life, he's unhappy or depressed, instead of looking at, why am I unhappy or depressed, he goes right for the pills, and that's Western medicine for you. So, I will ask him, it's not that I don't believe that people could be chemically depressed, but I'll ask him, are you actually depressed, or is it because you have a really shitty marriage? And you have a really shitty life, past your career. Maybe if you, worked on that, and actually dealt with your life instead of trying to numb it, you wouldn't be depressed, and you wouldn't need those drugs. But every time he shuts down the conversation and he gets his pills, and then 6 months to a year later, I get the same phone call because he's back in the exact same place, because he's not being true to himself, and he's not listening and acting on his inner dialogue. Because ultimately, they have this whole idea of this heart-head connection. So there's like this whole other intelligence in our hearts. And our hearts put out this supposed electromagnetic field like the brain does, blah, 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 blah. Again, I'm not a scientist, but that's why when you feel something emotionally, you feel that feeling in your chest area. And when you feel that, that is an indicator, that is a warning. That's a warning that something isn't right. And when something isn't right, it's worth investigating. It's worth considering. It's worth exploring. Because when we do this, just like in the garden, 9 times out of 10, you're going to find your answer. And even if you don't find the answer you like, or find an answer right away, that journey is going to be a lot more productive than the disempowerment of fear and anxiety. I hope that makes sense. All right, I'm going to let you go. Finally, the rain has stopped here, and as you can see, I have a lot of work to do. So I want you to take care of yourselves and take care of each other and take advantage of this incredible time we're living in. Don't be a victim. Don't let fear overtake you. Embrace these moments as precious time. It's what we all wanted, right? And remember, when this is all over with, how much you wanted to be with your friends and family, or out in public at a restaurant around other human beings, or how scared you were that there wasn't going to be enough food or you didn't have enough money saved. Because this will be over very soon. But it will probably happen again. It happened in 1918, and who knows if it's going to be another 100 years or if it's going to be 8 years. Let this be a teacher. Let this be a teacher, and you will feel a lot more empowered and a lot more positive and much stronger. Take care of each other, wear your masks, wash your hands. Bye.